Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. Uh, Tonight it's Glenn and I, no Tyler, and we're recording on the eve of a game against the Heat. How are you, Glenn?
I'm good, and I'm so tempted to start a fake rumor about Tyler not being here because of the disagreement you two had on the last episode. It's totally fake news, but it's still tempting to put that out there. So, I mean, it's good. You know, we talked about the Hawks lost game one. You run the gauntlet playing a Friday game, and I noticed that like for the first time I think ever, the 1 versus 8 is not the first game on Sunday. It's a later
Yes.
game, so sanity prevailed finally. Um, but I mean, I just looked the Heat are favored by a point and a half, according to what I saw on ESPN. And Hawks are shorthanded, so I think it's going to be. So I think it's going to be a tough task.
The most recent Hawks Heat game was the one game where Mo Gay didn't start. The Hawks played small. What did you think about that then, and what do you think is going to be the course tomorrow for the Hawks in that regard?
Yeah, well, I mean, so it seems, and this is me kind of trying to think along with Quinn, which is maybe a little dangerous because I'm not in his head, and but when they play small, it seems like they're trying to kind of lean into their offense. And that's what they did in that game. And if I recall correctly, they got off to a good start in the first quarter, but then Miami jumped the zone at them, and and Spo's obviously very good. So I think the Hawks have to be prepared to see a lot of different defensive looks and have a plan for what they might do with each of those. It was funny when they ran the zone, Dyson kind of getting cutting, working through the nail was the one kind of thing they had some success with. And then they short rolled a little bit into some space and stuff like that. But I mean, Spo just kind of decides he's not going to let Trey do what he wants to do, and then it's going to fall upon others. So I think it's going to be heavy lifting for Levert in this game when the ball comes out of Trey's hands. Um, for me, I think Levert should enter the game earlier than has been the normal practice. He sits like the first half of the first quarter, oftentimes. I think he needs to come in really early, especially if the offense is struggling with Levert off the court. Um, I think it's gonna be a tough task for the Hawks.
When the Heat aren't playing zone, how are they going to match up with Trey? Like who's going to have that on-ball assignment? Like they don't have necessarily the one great stopper. So how do they at least initially present a front as here's where we're going to start trying to slow you down? Who's going to be the person in front of Trey?
Yeah, well, I mean, um, they'll. I mean, not recently, but in the past they would use Highsmith on him. With his length, that's not something they've been doing so much lately. Feels like it's been a lot of Davion the last couple of games. Entree and Davion was actually making jump shots in those games, but he's a good defender, and he's not a big defender, but he really generates a lot of ball pressure and really does impact ball handlers with his technique and his aggressive style. So, I mean, it used to be that you would get, in the 2 years ago, 3 years ago, some of Gabe Vincent and some of some other guys and things like that. But now I think they really do kind of lean on, I mean, I don't know if we didn't see any Wiggins on Trey last time. That's other teams would kind of go in that direction with their lengthy kind of wing. But I think it's going to be a heavy dose of Davion
Do you
when
think
they're
he'll
not in the zone.
start?
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, Spo might start him. I don't know, but it's not what they've been doing. But
How do you think the Hawks rotation will shake out? Will it be are they going to be searching and using a lot of players like they did against Orlando? Do you think they'll pare it down? Like how are they going to try to manage the minutes so that there's not a lull as has been the case in a few games recently?
yeah, I mean, Spo is so good, like on the fly, kind of making decisions and adjusting on the fly that quit that. I mean, Quinn would be like, "Yes, I know, Glenn. I know all about Smoke." And so you have to be ready to kind of adjust to the adjustment and those sorts of things. But for me, I think the Hawks really. I think Quinn needs to cut the rotation down. I think he needs to play like 7.5 guys in this game, not nine. You know, and I think that when the Heat are playing both Bam and Ware, Bam is more up the floor and Ware is kind of in the dunker spot a lot, and in the corner a lot. So you could put a Kongwu on Ware and kind of keep him in a help position down on the baseline and let Mo work up the floor with Bam. Bam will require you with his we shall say creative screens. Um, you
No,
know,
not more of that. We just did that last game.
I mean, Mo really has to be prepped for how he impacts the screen angle, all that stuff, and which is hard to do for a guy who's not, super experienced. But Quinn might go the other direction and say easier to put Mo on Ware in the corner and let him be the weak side rim protector and let a Congo get up the floor with Bam. So that to me, that's decision number one on defense is which of those two do you want up the floor, which one do you want on the baseline?
I think that's interesting. But to me, I think the latter feels a little bit more important. I think that I think having Mo guarding Ware in the corner and having Okongwu up the floor in the screen action sounds a little bit more logical. I Mo did a good job against Boncaro one on one, but it's different when you've got to manage the timing of a somebody with a quick trigger like Hero. That's not the way the Magic play. I think it's going to be a Kongwu, but I don't know.
Yeah,
It's certainly one of the first big thing that I'm looking for.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it's a Kongwu and because Ware only does like two things, like pucker
Right.
spot corner. That's basically all he does, and that simplifies what you're asking Mo to do. If that's how it plays out.
Yep. And it also just makes it so that because I honestly one of the things that Mo has been so good at the last month is that it feels like they've given him some free reign to make a judgment call and just sell out like, okay, now it's time to go. Like when he knows the defense is broken down and he feels like he can get back and make a play, really coming from almost out of nowhere, like he has the license to do that. And if he's guarding Ware, I think he's going to be able to be more attentive in that area.
Yeah, agreed. I think his natural talent, and where he is right now, and his defensive skill, and how he can most impact the game. I think being low man on the baseline or on the corner, helping from the corner is a more logical thing. The other big thing that's been a struggle against the Heat is how do you keep Niang off of Hero? Because they like every NBA team are going to go look for the weak defender and try to force that defender onto the ball. And they even seem to prefer that over kind of trying to get Trey on there. Trey's learned to really kind of avoid getting switched on to. I mean his show technique has gotten better.
But not
Things
in
like
the
that.
Orlando game.
No,
In the Orlando game, it was pretty dismal. Like, and you kind of get it. Like they were asking him to do so much on offense, but like it was not there in the Orlando game. Like he was actively getting in the way more than even helping. Like it was because there were times when his man would go to screen, and I felt like the person who was on the ball initially was doing a good job to fight through and stay on the ball. And it was less the screener getting in the way than Trey on a couple of occasions. Like Trey, you can't do that. Like you got to make sure that if they get over the screener, that you're not in their way either. Like there was a couple times he got caught, and I thought it was obviously quite detrimental.
yeah, yeah. I mean part of that is Orlando. They're physical in every part of their play.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not an excuse for how it went. It's just that's something that you and Tyler and I talked about it, how the Hawks just aren't really built in their current form. No Jalen, no Clint, etc. No Nance to really kind of be able to kind of combat physicality. And you think about the Miami game, they're not quite the physical team that they were a couple years ago.
Right.
So maybe that helps some. They are sort of like the Warriors in that they offensively they rely on their scheme. They on the weak side, split cuts. They run action on the strong side and the weak side at the same time to stress the defense and make you pay attention to the whole offensive half court. And you just have to stay kind of connected and aware of everything that's going on there. And they use that. In the last two times I previewed on my Patreon the Hawks and Heat, I said the Heat want to drag this down into a half court game. That's what the Heat want to do. And the last time when the Hawks played, the Hawks for about the first, I don't know, 6, 7 minutes, the Hawks really got in transition and pushed the pace. And the Heat just decided that wasn't going to happen anymore. And the rest of the game was a half court game. If the Hawks let the Heat drag this down into being a half court possession by half court possession by half court possession, the Hawks are going to lose this game. The Hawks are going to have to find a way to push the pace, to tilt the game flow towards what it needs to be for them to be do what they do best.
It, with let's see if I can phrase this the right way. Against the Bulls, like Tyler Hero got to do whatever he wanted, I guess.
Right?
Um, I think he's going to be more limited against Dyson Daniels. Do you think that there's one action or one aspect of getting Hero some good looks that the Heat are going to lean on more than others?
Yeah. So what one thing Spo has done a couple times is instead of putting Hero on the ball, kind of running a traditional ball screen action. I mean, Dyson's a terrific screen navigator. So he'll start Hero off the ball, use a DHO, use pistol, and then force Dyson to kind of cut over one or two screens from the bottom of the floor towards the top of the floor as Hero's going across those screens.
Yep.
And that it gives him a beat. Like he gets the ball, without Dyson on him immediately. And as you mentioned a few minutes ago, quick trigger, a really, really quick trigger. And he's become a very decisive offensive player too in terms of getting to his spots and those sorts of things. Um, but it's interesting because a lot of times he'll lift out of the left corner. But if you look at his shot chart on NBA.com, he wants to get like a lot of right-handed guards. He wants to get left. If you look at the density of his shot profile, it's all left of the lane and towards the left 3-point break. And so but Miami does a lot of stuff to help him get left. He'll reject a screen and go left, reject a screen and go left. And so it'd be interesting if Dyson can push him right or not, because he's much less effective when he's going right. When he goes right, he basically wants to drive and get to the backboard for a layup. It's really about all he's trying to do. Left, he's trying to get to that step back that he has. And
Mhm.
so it's just gonna be interesting to see the way Dyson tries to force him um, away from where he wants to be, and if he can have that kind of impact defensively.
Is there one auxiliary player on the Heat who is particularly worrisome in this matchup? Is it maybe you already mentioned him? I don't know.
I mean, I'm still trying to. It's one of those things where it's like Davion. He has a reputation for being a really hard worker, and I joke like the Heat can turn anybody to a real basketball player. I joke that like I'm a million years old, they could probably get me into a G League, if I worked hard enough. But the shooting, like historically he's not been a shooter, but like it seems like they taught him how to shoot.
Mhm.
But for me, the guy that's often the swing guy in this, apart from here, what trying to let hero is Duncan Robinson. If he's making shots, if he's making threes, if he's lifting into DHOs, and he has a pretty quick trigger too. When they get like 18 points from him, that's a big boost for Miami. And so which is kind of feels weird to say that, but when they're not getting offense from him, it's a little easier. When we're getting offense from him, also, I think it's a lot harder. And he's really good at stressing the weak side of the floor, but with his shake action and lifting and all that sort of stuff. And he's a good goes brush screener into he'll goes to brush to the 3-point line, and he's really really quick through that action. And if you use two defenders on the ball for even half a second, he will find a spot on the 3-point line and get a shot up before his defender can recover. And so all of that stuff that Miami does to stress you, the Hawks have to be super organized and they have to execute, better than they did against Orlando for sure.
Practice was kind of long today.
Yeah, a lot to plan for.
They don't usually go as long as they did today. I think there was plenty to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I hope, I mean, for Hawks fans and for the Hawks, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm right now I'm not feeling super enthusiastic about this. Um, I feel like Trey is tired and beat up. I feel like the last few weeks has been they just needed so much from him. I thought the ejection last game was just absolutely ridiculous.
I
You
mean, he did
know,
throw the ball. I think the main angle was kind of a complimentary angle, and if you see it from like there were a couple shots of like what it looked like from the opposite angle, and it looked like a
it
pretty
looked like
speedy pass.
he grabbed the ball and he kind of missed hit it or whatever, and then he tossed it towards the ref. And it's not like he wound up and like threw the like put velocity
No,
on
it
it.
was like a
It's
good wrist snap.
yeah, and it's harmless, you know. So anyway, we don't have to rehash all of that,
No, it's fun.
um,
I
but
mean,
not for
obviously
Trey.
it was pretty like obvious like what he was upset about because the Magic were like taking the extra shot when they could get it. Like
Yeah, and the
by shot,
officiating
I
crew did
mean
nothing
like a
about it.
physical shot away from the ball, like the ball's up and it rims off and the defender kind of rides Trey into the stanchion.
Yeah, Mr. Black.
Mr. Black, yeah. So I mean, it was clear what he was upset about. Eh,
Yeah, I mean, it just the the scale that officials use, like what all the stuff that the extreme example is all the stuff Draymond gets away with, like you know, is
right,
and then so I just it's to me it's completely unjustified that they use a different set of parameters for different players, right? And it's something that they have to fix. And you know, Trey get if you want to give Trey a tech because you thought he threw the ball at you, whatever, right?
right.
But I mean,
Do you ever
very few
think
other.
like Quinn? I'm pretty sure like if you look at all 30 head coaches, like I think Quinn had the fewest technicals this year. Do you ever wish like, hey, when he sees something, especially in a game like that where you're down 20, it's over. Like they're gonna lose. Do you wish he kind of made a point to the referees for Trey?
Yeah, I feel conflicted in my answer because there's two things. One is there have been times this year that the Hawks allowed poor officiating to really distract them.
Right,
And it seemed, if you listen to Quinn, like and kind of read between the lines of what he says, he really wants them to move on and not get distracted with the officiating. Can't
right.
control it, you know. So I think would it if he drew the attention of the officials and kind of brought the focus onto himself, would that give his team more space to not fixate on it? You know, I don't know. You have to ask Quinn if you think that would be helpful. There's been maybe three or four times this year I was like, just take a tech, man. You know, this is just absolute garbage. You know, take a tech. But I think if I'm just guessing, that he feels like the message he's been giving them to move on, and you'll actually see like when there's a bad call, you'll see, you know, tone, you know, kind of move the next play, move the next
Yeah,
play,
he'll be
move the
like
next play.
winding his hands in a circle, like keep going, just keep going.
Yeah, move on, right? Move on,
Yeah.
move on, move on. And so my guess is that Quinn doesn't want to, you know, jump in and kind of create more attention to that. He wants his team just to play through it, and that's something the Hawks have to do better next season is playing through, you know, poor, you know, officiating adversity, in my view.
Anything else about this Heat game that stands out to you that we didn't hit on in one question or another?
I mean, the big thing to me is well, Quinn shortened the rotation, you know, and maybe he play maybe that's not something if you're halfway to the third quarter and they're down 10, 12 points or something like that, I think he's got to. I mean, I think he's got to play Levert 20 minutes in the second half. I think he's got to play Trey 20 minutes in the second half. You know, Okongwu, hard to ask a center to play that many, but like 16, 17, you know. And so for me, I think that he's going to really have to, you know, if Niang can't stay off the ball, he's going to have to, you know, not play Niang. You know, if he has to play man instead of Niang, you know, that way that he has to go in that direction. Um, I do think man's defense plays a little better in this because it is a half court matchup, and so but we'll see. There's
Wait,
we
what was the
talked last
reason in
night
there? I didn't quite hear what you said there.
because Miami runs a set in the half court and they don't push a lot of pace.
Okay,
And so Miami lets you set your defense.
gotcha.
But then once you set your defense, they stress it with
Right.
all of the multi-dimensional stuff that they run. But I think man will be a little bit um have I think this is a better context for man defensively than like Orlando, where they play through their big guards and their big forward and things like that. So um, you
What
know,
do you think precipitated the change from the first half to the second half of the Orlando game where he went from man to V? Not that it worked, but like, why do you think he said, okay, this is something I got to do?
I mean, the one thing I can think of was just that he wanted to beat shooting and he playing from
Yeah, I
behind.
think so too. I think
Yeah,
like even more than just the volume of it. I felt like as a team, they were just choking off the number of temps.
yeah, and they weren't creating. They needed a shooter to create spacing and stuff, and um, but it's one of those things too, where like probably Veets had a phenomenal, but Veets taken a huge step forward this year. But defensively, he's still got to get stronger to be versatile, to have versatility. Defensively, he's got to get stronger. But I mean, the shooting equity he's developed this year has been a huge boost for the Hawks. The other interesting to me is how much does Ricochet play? I think this is a matchup that's good for him too, and I'd like to see him play 32 minutes. That's not been what Quinn's been doing. But I think he needs to lean into Mo Gay and Ricochet and when depending upon who the Heat have on the floor, I think Mans, like I said, works better in this defensive context than other games. And so now if Niang's knocking down threes, you live with his defense, But if he's not helping you on offense, then it's one of those things where Quinn might have to tell him to take a seat and you know go a different direction.
Do you suspect that Barlow's not in the rotation for this one?
I think it's gonna be one of those things where he plays like 3 or 4 minutes in the first half, and then depending on how it goes, I hope Quinn's, you know, it's so like, does Congo get in foul trouble? Does Nogueira get in foul trouble? That's
Right.
probably the
Yeah.
thing that will determine.
Yeah, I'm operating under the assumption that foul trouble is not, critical at that juncture.
Yeah, I think if Barlow plays more than 5 minutes in this game, I think that's a bad choice.
Okay.
So, what
Do
I
you think that
that's what I
do you think that he'll split Niang and Barlow or play them together?
um. Well, it'll be interesting to see when Bam. It's a little easier to do that when Bam is off.
Right.
A little easier to do that when Bam is off, and if you can still sneak that on when Hero is off too. Especially if Hero and Bam are off together. I mean, Quinn might be like, I'm going to get 2 minutes of this, and we're going to be fine with that. But as soon as those guys come back on, that configuration doesn't work for me at all. You know. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Quinn season on the line, if he really tightens that rotation, or not. And but I mean, it's not like Quinn that can just Quinn is coaching in a vacuum. He's got to react to what Spo's deciding to do too.
So if there's one player whose minutes go sort of dramatically up in a shortened rotation, who
I think
is
it's
it
LeVert.
and why is
I
it
think it's
Karis
LeVert.
LeVert?
Because they need a secondary offense. They need a secondary creation. Yeah, you know. And I know that he hasn't been making a lot of shots the last couple of weeks, but if there's a guy who's going to do it, he's the only one. He's the only one that can do it.
Okay.
And so hopefully he comes out and has a better shooting performance. We talked about last time about the fact that he hasn't had the luxury of attacking guards. He's been dealing with bigger defenders because of the fact that the Hawks are sliding everyone up a position. Um, but Miami, they're not as big as
Yeah,
Orlando.
it's a little different. It's certainly not Orlando. Like Alec Burks is not Anthony Black size wise. Like it's just a different beast.
It is, and so for me, like you ask on the Heat side, for me on the Hawk side, I feel like the variable is LeVert. If they can get 22, 24 points from LeVert, I think they have a great shot to win the game.
Okay, interesting. Wow. This is
But
it's
but
so
I
weird,
just
these games. It's like
I know.
it's
But
just the
they,
fact that there's this game that's like a playing game. It's not part of a playoff series, and it's like you might be in the playoffs in 24 hours. You might be just completely done in 24 hours. I don't know. It's very I don't even know what the word is. It's a little bit disorienting, I guess, is the word because it's just new enough that it doesn't have like it doesn't have the buildup of a game seven. It's just kind of this random one-off with a lot of stakes and even more this year with the potential of a lottery pick on the line.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just it's one of those things like watching from a distance. And I had mentioned I watched the first half last game. And I had to kind of track the game second half on my phone as I was had work duties hosting clients a hockey game and stuff like that. But for I don't know, it's just hard for me to tell. Like, are the Hawks in a good place mentally? Are they just are they? I think we all know that basically every team that doesn't have the luxury of starting to sit guys because they have a cushioning in the standings or whatever. Everybody's on mental fumes and physical fumes at this point. Everybody is. And
Right.
and so it's hard to know if like can the Hawks find a way to come out and put a really really good performance together to win this game. And I have to remind myself I mean, there's just so many things that Spo could do, whether it's zone or just using ball pressure on Trey or trapping or hedging or what doubling. Oh, he's probably going to do all of that, all of the above at different points in the game tomorrow, and the Hawks just have to kind of navigate through that. That's why I think the vert is really the key for the Hawks.
I know we talked about the zone before, but it is kind of gravely concerning. Like what if the Heat do that and go to the zone, like what is the best Hawks countermeasure at this point?
Yeah, I mean, so typically you want to attack the middle of the zone if you can,
Right.
right? And like I said, Dyson had some success kind of getting through the nail there and getting to his floater.
And
And
it's
apart from
weird though
that, I
because
didn't.
it feels like for the last 2 weeks, like Dyson's taken a little bit of a step backwards passing wise.
Yep.
There have been games where he's like, uh, he's had somebody in the short roll that he was supposed to get the ball to, and he just misses. He had one in transition against the Magic that was like an absolute killer because if he makes like a good choice on the fast break, he probably would have gotten the Magic to take a timeout, and
Yeah.
instead it went back the other way, and it kind of evened things out for the Magic. Like it's just, yeah, that's. I think that by and large, people underestimate how good Dyson is, and he doesn't do a lot of things, but I feel like the things he does remarkably well.
Yep.
But I do think that Miami is just the kind of team that can disrupt his rhythm.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the other thing I mentioned it last time when the Hawks were in the middle of facing the zone is that it's a weird thing, but like NBA players when they kind of working on their shooting skills and how they get to their shots, they don't really do stuff that you would do to generate shots against the zone. It's
Right.
more coming off of a ball screen, getting to my step back, attacking the defender in front of me, attacking the closeout, whatever it is. And in his zone, you're kind of catching the ball, from the side, oftentimes just because the way the ball is moving around the perimeter
Yeah.
and not catching it centered, and it's a completely different process to generate threes. And because you don't see a lot of zone across the season, you don't really have a lot of muscle memory and stuff
Yep.
like that on how you kind of get to that. But it might be one of those things where when Spo goes to the zone, it's like you need the shooting and the Ainge shooting out there to kind of create some space. And then if you have shooting out there, then you have a little bit more likelihood of attacking the middle. But because it takes that spacing, it takes that gravity to kind of open the opposing defense up. And then, but of course, if Spo throws Niang and Veet out. I'm sorry, if Quinn throws Niang and Veet out there, then Spo might junk the zone and go back to man and make them do more traditional stuff. So um Spo's pretty good. So it's just gonna
Yeah.
it's gonna be the cat and mouse game I think will be interesting, and Spo has more of his full rotation, full complement of players, and Quinn doesn't, and that makes it harder, for on the Hawks side for sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this on short notice and the very busy what pre-playoff season. I don't even know what you want to call this, but yeah. Uh, thank you for taking the time, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Uh, I guess we'll say goodnight, Bob.
Bob.